Hey guys, Tempest here. Just a friendly Canadian reminder to keep force buying, and you're watching Thorin's YouTube.
CS.MONEY is not one of those scary, unregulated gambling websites. It's a complete skin ecosystem where you can buy, sell, and exchange skins in a single place, and has been on the market for more than 3 years. Now, speaking of coming onto the market, but actually now, rather than in the past, is Gen.G, an organization which is for the first time ever entering Counter-Strike, CSGO in this case. It's an org that has its roots in the Korean scene, but its owner is actually from Silicon Valley. They have an LCK team, which is the Korean League of Legends team. Most famously, they bought the world champion Samsung Galaxy, world champions of Season 7, although they were world champions in shocking fashion. They also own an Overwatch League team, the Seoul Dynasty, a perennially underperforming team, but a team that did have some quality players practically every season and was always expected to do better than they did. They never were anywhere close to winning a championship, despite sometimes having players you thought might go ahead and do that. So they have a track record of being sort of middling in most of the games they're in, probably a little bit underwhelming, despite seemingly having a lot of investment, funding. It seems like business-wise, they generally know what they're doing. It's just in terms of actually picking up talent, or the right talent and the right players, I have my criticisms of them. I'm pretty skeptical of some of the people they've got in terms of the people who are making the qualitative judgments and then actually convincing people to join their org. So they've bought the core of what was Cloud9's most recent roster. They bought daps, autimatic, and koosta from Cloud9. They added in SOM, who obviously is someone who I think was on loan or something to Cloud9 temporarily as a trial played in Cloud9 and was obviously like hyped as a rising talent last year. And then they most recently bought added as a fifth player BnTeT, who at this point in time is, I'd say, like within the Asian scene, one of the most famous players, arguably the best Asian player for the last couple of years. And as a coach, they have Elmer Poddy, who you might have seen from his, I think, pretty good YouTube videos where he breaks down strats and concepts behind what people are doing and does it in a very digestible fashion where it has some depth to it, but it also can reach a lot of like fairly casual fans. So if we want to assess this lineup and look at the players, let's go individually here. And obviously it's a totally new lineup. So we'll look at the players separately and then think about how they might fit together. So we'll start the head of the beast. It's obviously the in-game leader. If you have a team that has anything but some of the best players, you're going to get nowhere without a solid in-game leader. So luckily, in-game leader is actually one of the best positions in this team because daps is a player who, quite frankly, I mean, individually he's not a good player. I mean, even for other in-game leaders that aren't good fraggers, he's pretty bad. But I will say, he is someone where, as a leader, and in terms of his track record and resume as a leader, he's much better than this team. He's actually much better than this level. And I don't think it would have been unfair if the Evil Geniuses squad, formerly NRG, had kept him. I think actually they were at a very high level. A bunch of their players actually have shown since then, despite winning championships with Stanislaw, they're not really cut out to be like top 2 teams in the world type level because they're just so up and down. They're so inexperienced still at that level of the competitive rung. And they've got a little bit of development left to go. You've seen Breezy just fell apart completely towards the end of the year and just picked it up at Epicenter, basically. So I think in terms of leadership qualities, in the game tactically and running a squad and picking out pieces, I think daps is one of the better ones. In NA, he's one of the best in the game. I think he's a top 2-3 in-game leader in that region. So I think actually, overall, it's something of a steal that they've been able to get him. That's a great pickup. Yes, he is a pretty bad fragger. So the key thing is, everyone else on this team has to be a good fragger if you want to go anywhere with this team, most likely. Because the odds that you're going to lock into some sort of 100 Thieves type scenario where you don't really need that many star players and play overall quality, or an ENCE type scenario, I don't know about that. It's really tough to get a squad like that. You need really good team play usually, a nice tactical base, players who have a level of experience where they can actually play their role despite being lesser fraggers but still get more value out of it than you see on the stat sheet. I don't know that they've got that with this squad overall. His only flaw, I think, largely in terms of daps, is he's not really a guy on the emotional, on the mental side who is a great leader for me. He's not someone who's a great motivator. He himself seems to very easily lose faith or lose hope that something's going to happen. Oh gosh, things just didn't go my way. What a shame. Like, he's one of those guys. So that angle I can't really fuck with, but you just look at what he does in the game. I think he's a pretty legit in the game leader. I could often compare him. He's almost like an NA MSL for me. Well, as a result, perennially underrated, quite frankly. Then let's go to one of the stars of the team, because I like to go with the big players, so we can look at the positives here. autimatic is obviously, again, a player who, quite frankly, is better than this team. Like, this guy, I don't think it would have been unreasonable if he'd been an OG as a star player, or if he'd have had a call up to FaZe Clan, or if he'd have wanted to, if he'd had potentially, as the fake rumour went a while back, if he'd have been a change of player in an EG or a Team Liquid, that wouldn't be unreasonable. I mean, he's clearly a very good player. Now, we don't really know how good, because all he's done is play blasts in some small tournaments or come last place in big tournaments for the last couple of years with the train wreck that has been Cloud9. So we don't really know where his level is at now. With that said, in those games, he tended to be pretty good. Looked still like one of the best NA players, even when he swapped to the AWP, which I don't think should ever be a primary weapon for him in the same sense as it shouldn't be for Nico or Shocks, etc. He still was pretty good overall. It shows how even at a lower level of play or with lesser teammates, he was still the best player in the server most of the time. And then obviously his rifle, the guy's a beast. Like, I think someone who is absolutely a very good player. But you need to put him with the right players. He's been in some fairly bad or just like unlucky or underwhelming teams. Like, I do think the like they had with Kiyashima and Flush, etc. That could have gone further, but they had a lot of things go wrong that meant that basically never properly came together, did it? The problem for me is part of the reason why autimatic seemingly hasn't taken an offer to join an MIBR or Team Liquid or whatever is seemingly motivation. Like, there was one point in time where we heard that he was one of the players who didn't put in as many hours after the major win, and that he was a player who maybe just was happy to settle with what he had at that time. I can't buy the angle that it's org loyalty, because who's he loyal to at this point in time? And they even have some different ownership elements and people in charge of the team. And then also you look at it, like there's almost none of his teammates left there anymore. His coach isn't anymore. Who's he loyal to at this point in time? What even is loyalty in that respect? Like, if he was bad, they'd fucking cut him. So I don't even understand how people get tricked into that. So I don't think that is an angle personally. That might be what people say in interviews. I don't buy it is. So I think it's more actually they just wanted to chill back. Like, maybe he just lost passion for the game or didn't want to grind his hours again, or maybe didn't want to try a totally new adventure in another country or having to go international. Okay, there's reasons I can get it in that sense. You still get paid good money in Cloud9. It just sucks for me, because I thought this was someone who still definitely had a couple of really good years left in his career, potentially could have had the best years in his career left. So this isn't the team that's going to bring out the best years of his career in terms of team success, but hopefully it's got some of the pieces, I think at least 3 of the pieces, that could be part of a great team or a top 10 team, maybe even top 2 or 3 in NA within, let's say, the next year, the next 2 years, if they can make the right moves elsewhere or somehow the gambles in the other roles come off. So as a main star player, yeah, I think he's up there. He's not really like a player who's, I mean, he's obviously not a super aggressive style of player, so you need other stars, but they've got that elsewhere in the squad, because coming to the next player, the last player to join the team, BnTeT. Now, this guy has mad potential to explode in this team, in my opinion. Remember, the team that he made his name in was Tyloo, where he was playing with Chinese players speaking Mandarin, which to my knowledge he is not fluent in, and at times shot calling, at times not being the in-game lead, like all over the place what this guy had to do. And he was dealing with players which had very limited understanding of the European metagame, probably because they have barely any English fluency and don't have any connection, quite frankly, to the Western scene. They just play their game and hope it works. And they have skill, but that was basically actually sometimes a crutch for them to get by on. And sometimes I wish they'd have had more discipline in their overall game, like the Koreans did when they actually got their skills together in MVP for a little while. They weren't a top team because they had lesser players, but they had way better sense of actually how to play real Counter-Strike for me. So I think stylistically that team was always fucked. They just had a fun style of play, one that you could cheer for, that could cause crazy upsets. But the reason it could cause crazy upsets is because the variance in it was bonkers. They could upset almost any team on one map and then lose to legitimately any team on also almost any map, quite frankly. So for me, the key thing, not only with autimatic, because he's already worked with him, but key with BnTeT is if you want to see the best of BnTeT, a guy who I thought always should have been headhunted by like top European teams that are international squads, NA teams especially. I realise it might have been tougher to leave China at some point in the past for a reason we won't get into at this point. I think that daps has to really shape the game around BnTeT. He has to do for BnTeT what he did for Cirque when Cirque joined Gen.G. Set the game up around him, give him some of the other players. I mean, you don't really have supportive elements in this team, which is a concern for me. Set the game up, though, around BnTeT and give him the maximum resources to pop off. Give autimatic the second most resources to pop off. And at that point in time, you have some firepower, some legit firepower, from which you can start to build upsets, start to build placings, start to build a squad that's still probably 1 or 2 pieces from actually being a legit team that we really have to consider relevant in tier 1. So the last 2 players are SOM, right? He was pretty questionable for me offline when I saw him play those first tournaments of Cloud9 and other squads. I can understand the idea of you gamble on potential. There's not that many players out there you can get right now unless you're going to sign big names, which I think they should have done in terms of Europeans. But okay, they didn't. They let those go to other squads. And then finally, in terms of Koosta, listen, you all know my opinion on Koosta at this point in time. What the fuck is the point in even having him on these teams? It was literally, no exaggeration, literally around 4 years ago that he built that hype that he got his name from and got to join Team Liquid from. Now, I know things about Team Liquid practices. I don't have to go on the official games that you guys are, oh, but Shimple took the orc from him. I know how practices went. I know some things about this guy's personality. It's not that he is a bad person, but I don't think he has the mentality to be a top player. I think he has crumbled like a motherfucking nice and light cookie, like absolutely for good reason. I think his skill set actually, if he had the right mindset and he'd stuck to his guns, literally and figuratively, could have gone somewhere. He had some talent. He certainly even probably has some talent now. It's just I don't feel like he has the mindset to be the kind of player that his skill set actually determines he is. And then is he like a super smart player? Is he going to make all the right moves? I don't know about that. I don't really buy the angle he's going to be some like god tier support player. I wasn't impressed with him, quite frankly, when he was in some of the more recent teams before Cloud9 even. Like, I think it's just a guy who's just stuck around for a long time. He kept stealing checks. Fair play to him if he wants to make money. I just don't know why these teams pick him up. That's the angle I want to know. So what has he done in the years since those 4 years ago? Not a fucking lot, right? Then you go and you look at the coach, Elmer Putty. I like that move. As I alluded to before, I think his videos were good. He seemed to have a decent grasp of the game. He had some nice insights he could find. He's a pretty good communicator, pretty happy-go-lucky guy. Seems like he'll vibe well with daps, be able to work well with him, because obviously daps worked a long time with BnTeT when he was in his other squads and had coaching staff, obviously, of his own. The real thing for me is the potential. Like, listen, when they play in the NA League, the B-Site League, I think with the teams that I'm aware of that are going to be in that league so far, they have a chance to be decent. They could be middle of the pack to, let's say, like, if there's going to be 12 teams, let's say they could be like 8th, 6th, depending on how it goes. I think the daps automatic BnTeT angle's pretty strong. I really think you could do a lot with that. My problem is you're going to have to get really lucky with SOM and koosta, especially in terms of their roles, to have the role balance in the team, and then to make the overall style of the team, if you want to be top 10 or relevant at all. My issue here is I do think that Gen.G got fleeced. They got tricked. They got kind of conned, because I think what happened is when they signed those players from Cloud9 initially, I saw that and I was like, what the fuck is this? Like, what? Look, that's a team you're announcing. With that said, by getting BnTeT, I do think they've made a decent situation out of it. Certainly not that good. Like, if Cloud9 does end up signing 80 kids, way better than that. But, or fucking TSM's proposed lineup that I heard, it's like a one player you know, and even then wasn't an elite player, and then a bunch of fucking nobodies that shouldn't even be in a league like that. So, like, that's outrageous. But then again, first of all, Cloud9 deal isn't done for a reason. There might be more yet to come out on that, and it might not even be that team they sign. But the reason I'm underwhelmed is because just look at squads that have been signed or created. So why weren't teams like Gen.G, who got the money, if they really knew what they were doing, why haven't they got Evil Geniuses lineup? Why haven't they got 100 Thieves' lineup? Why haven't they got Virtus Pro's lineup? Or fucking Heroic, or Forza, or Tricked before they became Mad Lions? If you want to go with another side angle, if they want to make their own squad, why weren't they in the bidding for OG? Or if they were, why didn't they get the OG lineup? Like, there are players out. How about some of the players that joined Complexity? Some of them are better than the players in this team and would also make for a banging team if you added one or two of them. So, especially in light of the league that they're going to play in, where I think it would just be cooler to have one of the big names over a team like this potentially, if they end up being one of the teams it was rumoured they were. I think it's a bit underwhelming, quite frankly. With that said, once you settle into the expectation, it has to be an NA team and NA players, and it can't be AG. Right, at that point in time, fair enough. Like, this is not a terrible team, like I said. They made a decent effort out of what they put out of initially putting themselves in a sort of a difficult situation. It's a decent enough squad. There's some potential there even, but they're a move or two away from it. And then they need all the players that were established to play at basically not peak level, but at like 80% of what you expect from them if you want this to be a real solid squad. But there's the pieces there, and I have some trust in daps to be able to manage the squad, to find people's right roles, and to find the right style for them to be able to play. This video was kindly supported by Alexander Rao, Blunt Smoking Anus Destroyer, Dane Cuskley, Dean Tanglis, Chi Mao, JDubs, NateDOhDoubleG, Peter the Feeder, Tobias Bernasconi, and a special thanks goes out to Jerky's Minion and Mohammed, Alabdul, Razzaq, Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? Maybe you'd like to ask me a question in my monthly Patreon AMA. Would you like teasers on upcoming content that I'm doing? Maybe you want to take part in a discussion directly with me. Well, if so, then put your money where your mouth is and join the Scrilluminati today at the Patreon link in the description below.